Another perspective on it. Rasool's expected, of course, as our viewers said, to brief the president on his expulsion after being declared a persona non grata. Let's discuss this with Dr. Ross Harvey from Good Governance Africa. Doctor, good morning. Very good to have you with us today. I'd like to start the conversation around the way that Rasool was welcomed back into the country yesterday. The president emphasizing, asking, please, no fanfare, let's tone it down. You saw what took place yesterday. What can we read into governance? What can we read into that tripartite alliance and the relationship there when we look at the way Rasool was welcomed?
Good morning, Jenny Lee. Thanks for having me. I think two things. So one, as the previous correspondent indicated, Rasool's support base is still strong in the Western Cape. Both among the left-leaning dimensions of the tripartite alliance and with the Muslim population. And so I think that whatever the president indicated in respect of how citizens should respond was not likely to gain traction. And there's strong support, especially if you consider the Free Palestine movement, and on the left certainly there's quite a lot of support for Rasool's statement that a lot of what is going on between the US and South Africa is driven by supremacism. So from a governance perspective, this I think that the Cape Town reaction is probably not the main story. I think the main story certainly is the nature of our relationship with the USA going forward. And that is certainly in jeopardy. And we've scored a number of own goals there that we're going to have to work very hard to restore.
What do you make of the fact that Rasool says he has no regrets? In fact, he will carry the status of persona non grata with a sense of dignity. Some people, as you also indicated now, Dr. Ross, do see him as somebody who stood up for South Africa against Trump. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that, while it's all good and well from a rhetorical perspective to stick to your guns, and no doubt there is an element of supremacism that drives the way in which the US is behaving towards not only South Africa, but to many states. At the same time, that's not all there is to the story. There's also realpolitik. And the US has some genuine grievances against South Africa, which are fully understandable. And from a kind of traditional conservative Republican perspective, if you like, those things are to be understood. One thing that Ebrahim Rasool did admit to, if you like, is that perhaps he hadn't done enough to really convey South Africa's interests in a winsome way. And as much as he'd get something of a hero's welcome among some quarters for having stood up to President Trump, the issue there is we're in a different world, and one should always speak truth to power, but one should be circumspect and wise in how one does that. The how is all important, and part of that how requires, I think, a humble admittance that South Africa is in many respects antagonistic towards the US. Our relations with China and Russia, the ANC's welcoming of Iran, the case against Israel at the ICJ, despite very strong evidence, in fact now having come out through the Roberts report produced for the House of Lords in the UK, showing forensically the genocide committed against Israel, if you like. And so the US, this is not a hard situation to read. And I think South Africa is going to have to take a hard cold look at itself in respect of restoring our national interests.
Doctor, most people's analysis has been that the USA stance, Trump's stance against South Africa, is largely based on misinformation by campaigns driven by, for instance, AfriForum Solidarity. You mentioned that you believe that the USA does have somewhat you call genuine issues with South Africa. Are those the issues that you just referred to in your answer, your previous answer, for instance?
Yeah, I think there's that. And then generally, you know, we also, and what I haven't seen a lot of in the media is we have to remember that in terms of our grey listing by the Financial Action Task Force, two of the primary issues there that not only the US has, but predominantly that the US has with South Africa is that we don't have sufficiently strong controls against potential terrorism financing, nor have we demonstrated sufficient commitment to going after high-profile, politically exposed persons, especially in the wake of the Zondo Commission. So those two things are thorns in our side, if you like, from a US perspective. I do think that mischievous lobbying by Solidariteit and AfriForum has played an unfortunate role in this regard. However, as Dirk Kotze pointed out just a few minutes ago, South Africa's relationship with the US has been strained for a lot longer than that. And I do think that Ebrahim Rasool's comments provided a useful pretext on which to really make it clear to South Africa that the US is serious about advancing its own interests, and it's not interested in us having the kind of relationship that we do with Iran, Hamas, Russia and China.
Doctor, in conclusion, as Dr. Dirk Kotze also touched on earlier, relationship building with the U.S. is critical. This week, how President Cyril Ramaphosa will be handling the expulsion of Ebrahim Rasool, but also his replacement will be critical and watched from around the world, certainly from the U.S. Your expectations, your advice, given that this is a critical period for U.S.-SA relations?
Yeah, absolutely critical, Jenny. So $20 billion worth of bilateral trade per annum. That's the nature of our relationship with the US. Over 600 US subsidiaries in operation in South Africa. That's a large volume of people who are employed. And in a context of high unemployment, it's absolutely imperative from a national interest perspective to protect our relationship with the USA. That will mean some compromise that many people are going to feel very uncomfortable with. And President Ramaphosa's two ambitions are going to be to placate the internal dynamics of both the GNU and internally within the tripartite alliance. And he's going to have to ensure then that he himself can demonstrate to the Trump administration that he is serious about sending a diplomat to the US, an ambassador to the US that actually carries some weight and a record of demonstrating the importance of the relationship that South Africa does have with the USA, especially through AGOA.
Well, Doctor, thank you so much for weighing in on this conversation. That was Dr. Ross Harvey, Good Governance Africa Chief Research Officer. Certainly a conversation that will continue here on eNCA. Now, another top story this week.